December 25th, 2023, Christmas morning. The day I thought would be filled with my baby's laughter echoing through our home in Detroit, Michigan, turned into the day I discovered who my husband really was. Hey, beautiful souls, before we dive into this story, I need y'all to do me a favor. Drop a comment right now telling me what country you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button to subscribe to amazing stories for free and smash that like button because this story is going to take you on a roller coaster you never saw coming. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around till the very end. I'm in the kitchen at 6 a.m, flour dusting my apron, cinnamon filling the air as I prepared Christmas breakfast for my family. My hands were working that dough like my mama taught me, humming Silent Night under my breath when I heard the front door open. Strange, because William, that's my husband, had said he was going to sleep in. The kids were still snuggled in their beds, dreaming of Santa and presents, completely unaware that their world was about to shatter. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked toward the living room, expecting to see William maybe bringing in some last-minute gifts from the car. But what I saw instead? Lord have mercy. What I saw made my heart drop to my stomach like a stone falling into a deep well. There stood my husband of 8 years, my William, the father of my 3 babies, with his arm wrapped around a woman I'd never seen before. She was tall, light-skinned, draped in designer everything from her Louis Vuitton purse to her Christian Louboutin heels that probably cost more than our monthly grocery budget. Her hair was laid to perfection, makeup flawless like she'd stepped off the cover of a magazine, and she was looking around our home like it disgusted her. "Sophia," William said, not even having the decency to look ashamed, "we need to talk." I stood there in my flour-covered apron, my hair in a messy bun because I'd been up since 5 preparing a meal for the man who was now bringing another woman into our home on Christmas morning. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, creating warmth and love in our kitchen, while he was bringing coldness right through our front door. "William, what's going on?" My voice came out steady, though inside, I was screaming. Years of walking on eggshells around this man had taught me to keep my composure, even when my world was falling apart. The woman, and I use that term loosely, rolled her eyes and let out this bitter laugh. "Oh, so this is the wife." She looked me up and down like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. "Honey, I can see why William needed an upgrade." An upgrade? Those words hit me like a physical blow, but I didn't flinch. I'd been through too much, survived too much, to let some stranger's words break me. At least not on the outside. William cleared his throat, and for the first time in months, I saw something resembling discomfort in his eyes. Good. At least he had enough humanity left to feel awkward about destroying his family on Jesus' birthday. "Sophia, this is Emma Johnson. We're together now." Together. Such a simple word, but it carried the weight of 8 years of marriage, 3 children, countless sacrifices, and all those nights I'd stayed up worried sick when he came home late thinking something terrible had happened to him, when really he was probably with her. Emma stepped forward, her heels clicking against our hardwood floors I'd mopped on my hands and knees just yesterday, wanting everything perfect for Christmas morning. "Williams told me so much about you," she said with fake sweetness dripping from her voice, "though I have to say the pictures didn't quite capture." She gestured vaguely at my appearance. I looked down at myself, my pajama pants, my old college sweatshirt, my hair that hadn't seen a salon in months because every penny went to the kids' needs, my hands that were rough from cooking and cleaning and taking care of everyone but myself. I saw what she saw, A woman who let herself go. A woman who'd forgotten that she was once beautiful too. But you know what? I also saw something else. I saw a woman who sacrificed her dreams for her family's happiness. A woman who gave up her own identity to build others up. A woman who loved so hard that she forgot to love herself. Emma works in the bakery business. William continued like this was some casual introduction at a dinner party instead of him destroying our family. She's actually the manager of the biggest bakery chain in Detroit. Very successful, very independent. The way he said independent was like a dagger. For 8 years, he'd insisted I stay home. The kids need their mother, he'd say. We can't trust anyone else to raise them right. Your job is here, Sophia, making our house a home. And I believed him. I'd given up my dreams of expanding the baking skills my mama had taught me, convinced myself that being a wife and mother was enough, that it was noble, that it was what God wanted for me. Emma laughed again, that sound like nails on a chalkboard. Oh, Williams told me all about your situation, how you've never worked, never contributed financially. Must be nice living off someone else's hard work. Never contributed, never worked? If I hadn't been so heartbroken, I might have laughed. If only she knew the truth. If only they both knew. William, I said quietly, my voice steady, but the storm raging inside. The children are upstairs. For a moment, just a moment, his mask slipped. I saw the man I fell in love with all those years ago. The man who'd held me when I cried after my first miscarriage. The man who promised to love me through sickness and health, for richer or poorer, till death do us part. But then Emma placed her manicured hands on his arm, and the mask was back in place. That's actually what we need to discuss, he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. I've had papers drawn up. Divorce papers. On Christmas morning, with my children sleeping upstairs, dreaming of a magical day with their family. I took the papers with hands that didn't shake, though inside I was crumbling. You want me to sign these now? Today? The sooner the better, Emma chimed in. William and I have plans. We're going to Aspen for New Year's. Can't have any loose ends hanging around. Loose ends. That's what 8 years of marriage, 3 beautiful children, and countless sacrifices had amounted to. Loose ends. I looked at the papers, at the formal legal language that reduced our entire relationship to assets and custody arrangements. Primary custody to William, the house to William, the cars to William. Me? I got nothing. According to these papers, I was entitled to nothing because I had contributed nothing of financial value to the marriage. There's also the matter of your living situation, Emma continued, walking around our living room like she was already redecorating it in her mind. William and I will need our privacy, and frankly, it's awkward having the ex-wife hanging around. Our living room. Our house. The place where I nursed 3 babies, where I'd stayed up all night when they were sick, where I created a warm and loving home while William was apparently creating another life entirely. You want me to leave today? William finally looked uncomfortable. Maybe not today, Sophia. It's Christmas. Oh no, Emma interrupted, turning those cold eyes on him. We discussed this, William. Clean breaks are better for everyone, especially the children. They need to adjust to their new reality. New reality. My baby's new reality, where their mama is just gone. And where exactly do you expect me to go? I asked, though inside I was already making calculations, already planning, already survival mode thinking that I'd learned from years of walking on eggshells.
Emma shrugged like it wasn't her problem. I'm sure you'll figure something out. Women like you always do. Women like me. And what kind of woman was I, exactly? The kind who'd given up everything for love? The kind who'd trusted completely? The kind who'd believed that marriage meant partnership, not ownership? I folded the papers carefully and set them on the coffee table, the same table where we'd played board games with the kids just last week, where I'd served William breakfast in bed on his birthday, where we'd sat together years ago planning our future. I need to think about this, I said quietly. Emma's eyes flashed with irritation. What's to think about? William's made his choice. You're just excess baggage now. Excess baggage. Each word was designed to cut, to diminish, to make me feel as small as possible. And if this had happened a year ago, it might have worked. But something had shifted in me recently. Maybe it was turning 35 and realizing life was too short to live it small. Maybe it was watching my children grow and wanting them to see their mother as strong, not broken. The children, I said again. We'll be fine, William said quickly. They'll adjust. Kids are resilient. Resilient? What a convenient word for the damage adults do to innocent hearts. I want to tell them myself when they wake up. Emma's eyes rolled again. This is taking too long. William, just no. The word came out sharper than I intended, and both of them looked surprised. He wasn't used to me standing up to him. Honestly, neither was I. Fine, Emma said, checking her expensive watch, but don't take too long. We have a life to start. A life to start, while mine, apparently, was ending. They left then, William mumbling something about calling later, Emma already on her phone making plans for their day. I watched from the window as she climbed into a brand new BMW, the kind of car I dreamed of driving someday, but had never even mentioned to William because I knew the response. We have 3 kids, Sophia. We need practical cars. But apparently, mistresses deserved luxury. I stood in that living room for a long time after they left, surrounded by the remnants of the life I'd built. The Christmas tree we decorated together, the stockings hung by the chimney with care, the presents underneath that I'd spent weeks carefully selecting and wrapping, wanting everything to be perfect. Perfect? What a joke! The smell of cinnamon still filled the air from the breakfast I was preparing, the breakfast that would now go uneaten because Christmas was ruined, because 3 little hearts upstairs were about to learn that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones who hurt you most. I walked back to the kitchen and turned off the oven. The cinnamon rolls I'd been making, William's favorite, made from scratch using my grandmother's recipe, sat there half-baked. Just like our marriage, apparently. That's when I heard little footsteps on the stairs. Mama, Mama, is Santa here? Did he come? My youngest, Michael, came barreling down the stairs in his Spider-Man pajamas, his hair sticking up in every direction, his face bright with Christmas morning excitement. Behind him came Ava and Charlotte, my girls, 7 and 5 years old, their eyes shining with anticipation. Mama, why are you crying? Because of course she noticed. My oldest had always been too perceptive for her own good. I wiped my eyes quickly. I hadn't even realized I was crying. Just happy tears, baby girl. It's Christmas morning. And so I did what mothers do. I pushed down my own breaking heart and gave my children Christmas morning. We opened presents. We ate the cinnamon rolls that I somehow managed to salvage. We played with toys and laughed and took pictures. I made sure that morning was magical for them, even though mine had become a nightmare. But children sense things, don't they? Even when we try to protect them. As the day wore on, they kept asking where Daddy was. Why wasn't he there for present opening? Why did he leave so early? He had some business to take care of, I told them, which wasn't exactly a lie. By evening, after a day of forced cheerfulness, after baths and bedtime stories, and tucking 3 little ones into their beds, I finally had a moment alone with my thoughts. I sat on my bed, our bed,
and looked at those divorce papers again. Really looked at them this time. The terms were devastating. I got nothing. According to William's lawyer, since I'd never worked during our marriage, I had no claim to anything. The house was in his name. The cars were in his name. Even our joint bank account apparently was legally his, since he was the sole contributor. I would leave this marriage with literally nothing but the clothes on my back and whatever personal items I could carry. 8 years of my life, 3 children, countless sacrifices, and I was worth nothing. But as I sat there feeling smaller than I ever felt in my life, something my mama used to say came back to me. Baby girl, she'd tell me when I was young and facing some challenge, sometimes God has to strip everything away so you can see what you're really made of. What was I really made of? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. My mama's best friend, Mrs. Brown, who ran a cleaning service. Mrs. Brown? It's Sophia Smith. Yes, ma'am. I know it's late. I need a favor. Within an hour, Mrs. Brown and her team were at my door. Professional movers, the kind who pack up entire households, who handle delicate items with care, who understand that sometimes a woman needs to leave quickly and quietly. You sure about this, baby? Mrs. Brown asked as her team got to work. Sometimes these things can be worked out. I looked around at the life I'd built, at the home I'd created with such love and care, at the place where I'd poured out my heart for 8 years. I'm sure, I said. And I was sure. For the first time in a long time, I was absolutely sure of something. They packed everything that was mine, everything that belonged to the children, clothes, toys, books, pictures, all the things that make a home but have no monetary value in a divorce settlement, all the things that apparently made me worth nothing in the eyes of the law.
The children slept through it all. I'd given them a little extra melatonin in their milk, something the pediatrician had recommended for travel. They needed their sleep, and I needed them not to see this, not to be traumatized any more than necessary. By 3 a.m, everything was loaded into the moving truck. 8 years of life packed up in a matter of hours. I called an Uber and loaded the kids in, still in their pajamas, still sleeping peacefully, trusting their mama to take care of them like I always had. As the Uber pulled away from that house, I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I had, I might have lost my nerve, might have gone back and begged, might have accepted being treated as less than I was worth just to keep some semblance of the life I'd known. Instead, I looked forward, toward the hotel where we'd spend the next few days, toward the phone calls I'd need to make, toward the truth I'd need to tell my children when they woke up. But mostly, I looked towards something William and his precious Emma had no idea about. Something that was about to change everything. You see, there are some secrets that even the closest marriages keep, some truths that even the most trusting wives hold back. And William, for all his assumptions about my worth, about my contributions, about my capabilities, had never bothered to ask the right questions. He'd never asked about the inheritance my parents had given me before we married. He'd never wondered why I never seemed worried about money, never panicked during his brief unemployment periods, never questioned his financial decisions even when they seemed risky. He'd never asked because he'd assumed. And assumptions, as he was about to learn, can be very dangerous things. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to how I became the woman sitting in that hotel room at 3:30 in the morning, watching my children sleep peacefully while their world fell apart around them. Let me tell you about how I learned to disappear. 8 years earlier, I was a different woman entirely. I was Sophia Brown then, 27 years old, working as a pastry chef at a small bakery in downtown Detroit.
living in a cute little apartment with my cat, Buttercup, and dreaming of opening my own place someday. I was good at what I did, more than good. I had the magic touch with dough that my grandmother had passed down to my mother, and my mother had passed down to me. People would drive across the city for my croissants, my eclairs, my wedding cakes that looked like fairy tales come to life. I was happy. Genuinely, completely happy with my simple life, my small apartment, my big dreams. That's when William walked into the bakery. He was everything I thought I wanted in a man. Tall, handsome, successful. He worked in finance, wore expensive suits, drove a nice car. But more than that, he paid attention to me in a way that made me feel special, chosen, precious. He said, "I've never tasted anything like this. You're incredibly talented." Incredibly talented. When was the last time someone had said that to me? When was the last time someone had seen my worth? He started coming in every morning before work, always ordering something different, always asking about the recipes, about my techniques, about my dreams for the future. He seemed genuinely interested in me as a person, not just as the woman behind the counter. "You should have your own place," he told me one morning, and the way he said it made me believe it was possible. We started dating, and for the first few months, it was everything I dreamed of. He took me to nice restaurants, introduced me to his friends, made me feel like I was part of something bigger than my small world. But there were signs, even then, that I was too in love to see clearly. Like how he'd suggest what I should wear when we went out together. "You'd look beautiful in blue," he'd say, and I'd change into blue, thinking he was being thoughtful. Or how he'd order for me at restaurants. "She'll have the salmon," he'd tell the waiter, even if I'd been looking at the chicken. "It's healthier," he'd explain, and I'd smile and nod, thinking he cared about my well-being. Or how he'd gradually started suggesting that my job was beneath me. "You're too talented for that little bakery. You deserve better." I thought he meant I deserved to follow my dreams of opening my own place. I didn't realize he meant I deserved to give up working altogether. The proposal came 8 months after we met. A romantic dinner at the fanciest restaurant in Detroit, down on one knee, a beautiful ring, everything perfect. "Marry me, Sophia," he said, and the entire restaurant was watching, and I was overwhelmed with joy and surprise and the fairy tale perfection of it all. Of course I said yes. The wedding planning was intense. William had very specific ideas about everything: the venue, the flowers, the dress, the guest list. He wanted everything perfect for you, he'd say, when I'd suggest something different. "You deserve the best." And I was so busy being grateful for his attention, his love, his desire to give me the best, that I didn't notice how little input I actually had in my own wedding. My parents were concerned. I remember that now. My mama pulled me aside 2 weeks before the ceremony. "Baby girl, you sure about this man?" "Of course, Mama, I love him." "Love is good, but respect is better. Does he respect you?" I laughed. "Mama, he's giving me a fairy tale wedding. He thinks I'm a princess." "Princesses are pretty to look at," she said quietly, "but they don't have any real power." I didn't understand what she meant then. I thought she was being old-fashioned, maybe a little jealous that her baby was growing up and moving on. The wedding was beautiful, I have to admit it. Everything William had planned was absolutely perfect. I felt like a princess walking down that aisle, seeing the pride in his eyes, knowing that this successful, wonderful man had chosen me. But during the reception, something happened that should have been a warning. My old boss from the bakery had come to the wedding, along with several of my former coworkers. They were all gathered at one table, and I could hear them laughing, telling stories about the crazy orders we'd filled, the disasters we'd averted, the triumphs we'd celebrated together. I was sitting at the head table with William, watching them, feeling the strange pull toward their table, toward the life I was leaving behind. "Go ahead," William said, noticing where I was looking. "Go say hello." So I did. I walked over to their table, and immediately I was enveloped in warmth, in memories, in the camaraderie of shared work and shared dreams. "Sophia!" My old boss, Mrs. Rodriguez, stood up and hugged me tight. "You look absolutely stunning, honey." "Thank you for coming," I said, and I meant it. These people had been my work family, my daily companions, my cheerleaders. "So what's the plan now?" asked Jenny, one of my former coworkers. "You gonna open that bakery you always talked about? Maybe cater some weddings like this one?" Before I could answer, I felt William's hand on my shoulder. "Actually," he said, his voice carrying that tone that I was just beginning to recognize, the one that brooked no disagreement, "Sophia won't be working anymore. I make enough to support us both, and when we have children, she'll want to be home with them full-time." The table got quiet. I could feel the shift in energy, the subtle disapproval, the surprise. "But her talent," Mrs. Rodriguez started. "Will be put to good use at home," William finished smoothly. "I'm lucky enough to have a wife who can make me the most incredible meals every day." Personal chef. That's what he'd reduced my professional skills to. Personal chef. I laughed it off that night, told myself that William just wanted to take care of me, that there would be time later to pursue my dreams. After we got settled, after we had kids, after. The first year of marriage was the honeymoon period, literally and figuratively. William was attentive and romantic, and I threw myself into being the perfect wife. I cooked elaborate meals, kept our apartment spotless, learned to do things the way he liked them done. And when I got pregnant with Ava, I was over the moon. This was what I'd always wanted: a family, a husband who loved me, a life of purpose and meaning. William was thrilled too. "This is perfect, Sophia," he said, his hands on my barely there belly. "You were meant to be a mother." Meant to be a mother. As if that was the only thing I was meant to be. The pregnancy was difficult. I was sick constantly, exhausted, emotional. But William was patient and caring, bringing me ginger tea, rubbing my feet, telling me how beautiful I looked, even when I felt like death warmed over. "After the baby comes," he said one evening as we lay in bed, his hand on my growing bump, "we should think about buying a house, somewhere with a big kitchen for you, a yard for the kids to play in." Kids, plural. I liked that he was thinking ahead, planning for the family we'd build together. "Maybe somewhere with space for a home bakery," I suggested tentatively. Just for fun. Maybe sell some stuff at farmers markets or something. His hand on my belly stilled. "Sophia, honey, you are going to have your hands full being a mother. Trust me, you won't want the added stress of running a business." Added stress. That's what my dreams had become. But I was pregnant and hormonal and tired, so I let it go. There would be time later to revisit the conversation. Ava was born on a beautiful spring morning in May, and the moment I held her in my arms, I understood what people meant when they talked about love at first sight. This tiny, perfect human being was half of me and half of William, and I would do anything, sacrifice anything, to give her the best life possible. William was a proud father, taking pictures, calling everyone we knew, posting on social media about his beautiful girls. For those first few weeks, we were a perfect little family. But then reality set in. Newborns are exhausting. Everyone knows this intellectually, but until you're living on 2 hours of sleep, dealing with endless crying, trying to figure out why your baby won't stop fussing, you can't really understand what it means. William went back to work after 2 weeks. He said, "I have to," he said apologetically. "We need the income, especially now." So I was home alone with Ava, trying to figure out how to be a mother, how to keep this tiny human alive and healthy and happy. And I was failing. Or at least that's what it felt like I was failing. Ava cried constantly. She wouldn't sleep unless she was being held. She had colic, reflux, what seemed like every difficult baby condition in the books. I was up all night, every night, walking the floors, bouncing her, singing to her, begging her to please, please just sleep for an hour. When William came home from work, I'd hand her over gratefully, desperate for just a few minutes to shower, to eat something, to remember what it felt like to be human. But William would hand her back within minutes. She wants her mama. You're the one with the magic touch. Magic touch. I didn't feel magical. I felt like I was drowning. Maybe I could go back to work part-time, I suggested one evening when Ava was about 3 months old. Just a few hours a day. Mrs. Rodriguez said I could come back whenever I wanted. William looked up from his laptop where he was working even though he'd just gotten home. Sophia, we've talked about this. Ava needs her mother. You can't just hand her over to strangers. Not strangers. My parents could watch her, or we could find a good daycare. Absolutely not. His voice was firm, final. I didn't get married and have a child so that someone else could raise her. Your job is here with our daughter. Your job. Not our job. Not our shared responsibility. My job. And so I stayed home, and I learned to disappear a little bit each day. When Ava was 18 months old, I got pregnant again, Charlotte. And 20 months after that, Michael. 3 children under 5. 3 beautiful, demanding, exhausting, wonderful little humans who needed everything from me all the time. William's career was flourishing. He got promotion after promotion, raise after raise. We moved from our apartment to a nice house in a good neighborhood. We had 2 cars, a savings account, all the trappings of middle-class success. But I was disappearing. It started small. I stopped wearing makeup because what was the point? I was just going to get spit up on it anyway. I stopped doing my hair because by the time I got it looking nice, one of the kids needed something and it would be messy again within the hour. I stopped buying new clothes because the kids grew out of theirs constantly and their needs came first. I wore yoga pants and oversized sweaters because they were comfortable and practical and hid the baby weight that I never seemed to have time to lose. I stopped baking, except for basic meals. There was no time for the elaborate pastries and beautiful cakes I'd once created. No one to appreciate them anyway, since William preferred simple meals, and the kids lived on chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. Slowly, steadily, the woman I'd been before marriage, before children, before William, was fading away. And in her place was what? A mother? Yes. A wife? Yes. But what else? I couldn't remember.
William, meanwhile, was becoming more successful, more confident, more entitled. He'd come home from work and expect dinner on the table, the house clean, the children quiet and well-behaved. If any of these expectations weren't met, he'd get that look on his face. Not angry exactly, but disappointed, like I'd failed at my one job. Sophia, he'd say in that patient voice that somehow made me feel 2 inches tall. I work all day to provide for this family. Is it too much to ask that I come home to some peace? Peace, as if 3 small children were capable of existing peacefully, as if I had some magic wand to wave and make them stop being children. But I'd try harder. I'd shush them more, redirect them to quiet activities, find ways to contain their natural exuberance so that William could have his peace. And bit by bit, I was teaching them that their needs, their feelings, their very existence was somehow an inconvenience to the man who was supposed to love them most. The criticism became more frequent as the years went on. The house is a mess, Sophia. Even though I'd spent the entire day picking up toys only to have them scattered again minutes later. What did you do all day? As if caring for 3 small children wasn't doing anything. Maybe if you managed your time better, as if there was some secret time management technique that would create more than 24 hours in a day. Other wives seemed to handle this just fine, as if there was some standard I was failing to meet, some other wives who were successfully juggling everything without breaking a sweat. The worst part was that I started to believe him. I started to think that maybe I was failing, maybe I wasn't cut out for this.
Maybe other wives really were better at balancing everything. I'd see other moms at the playground, perfectly put together, and I'd wonder what was wrong with me. Why couldn't I get it right? Why was I always so tired, so frazzled, so behind on everything? It never occurred to me to wonder if those other moms had partners who actually partnered with them, if they had help, if they had support instead of criticism. All I knew was that I was failing at the most important job I'd ever had, and the person whose opinion mattered most kept pointing out my failures. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in March. Michael was sick, he'd been up all night with a fever, and Charlotte had decided that was the perfect day to have a complete meltdown about everything. Ava, trying to be the helpful big sister, had attempted to make her own breakfast and had managed to spill an entire box of cereal and a gallon of milk all over the kitchen floor. I was on my hands and knees, cleaning up the mess while holding a crying baby and trying to comfort a sobbing 5-year-old when William came downstairs dressed for work. He looked at the chaos, looked at me in my pajamas with spit up in my hair and exhaustion written all over my face, and shook his head. "This is exactly why I can't bring clients home. This place looks like a disaster zone." Disaster zone. That's what our home, our life, our family looked like to him. A disaster zone. "Michael's sick," I said quietly, not looking up from the floor I was mopping with paper towels. "He was up all night." "Maybe if you kept him on a better schedule, he wouldn't get sick so much." As if I could control when viruses struck, as if somehow a toddler's illness was my fault. And maybe if you didn't let Charlotte get away with a tantrum, she wouldn't act like this. As if I enjoyed her meltdowns. As if I wasn't doing everything I could to help her process her big emotions in healthy ways. "I'm doing my best, William." And I hated how small my voice sounded, how defeated. "Are you, though?" he asked, and there was something in his tone that made me look up. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've given up. Given up? On what? On keeping a perfect house while caring for 3 small children? On looking like a magazine cover while functioning on 3 hours of sleep? On being the wife he'd married while slowly losing myself in the process? "I haven't given up," I said, but even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. "When's the last time you did your hair, put on real clothes, cooked a decent meal?" Each question was like a small cut. "When's the last time you acted like the woman I married?" The woman he'd married. The woman who had dreams and ambitions and skills that extended beyond diaper changing and meal planning. The woman who was confident and creative and full of joy. Where had she gone? "I'm sorry," I whispered, because that's what I always said when William pointed out my shortcomings. "I'll try harder." "Good," he said, straightening his tie, "because honestly, Sophia, sometimes I wonder what happened to the woman I fell in love with." So did I. I wondered the same thing every single day. He left for work, and I sat there, on the kitchen floor, surrounded by cereal and spilled milk and crying children, wondering how I'd become this person, this woman who apologized for existing, who measured her worth by her husband's approval, who'd forgotten that she'd once been someone with dreams and talents and value beyond her ability to serve others. That night, after the kids were finally in bed, after I'd cleaned up the disasters of the day, after I'd cooked William's favorite meal and presented it with a smile, I sat in our bedroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. She was tired. So tired. Her hair was dull and lifeless, pulled back in the same messy bun every single day. Her skin was pale and dry from constant exhaustion and no time for self-care. Her clothes hung on her body like she was hiding in them. But more than that, her eyes. Her eyes looked empty, like the light inside had been slowly dimmed until there was nothing left but the basic functions of existing. This wasn't the woman William had married. He was right about that. But it also wasn't the woman I'd ever intended to become. That night, I made a decision. Not a big, dramatic decision that would change everything overnight, just a small decision to stop disappearing completely. I started with baby steps. I bought a tube of mascara and started wearing it even if I was just going to be home with the kids all day. I set my alarm 30 minutes earlier so I could drink a cup of coffee while it was still hot and read just a few pages of a book. I called my mama more often, just to hear her voice, to remember that I was someone's daughter, not just someone's wife and mother. And I started baking again. Just small things at first. Cookies for the kids' lunchboxes. A loaf of bread on Sunday mornings. Simple things that reminded me I had skills, talents, abilities that had nothing to do with how well I could manage William's expectations.
William didn't notice at first, or if he did, he didn't comment. The kids loved it though. They'd come running when they smelled something baking, their faces lighting up with joy. "Mama, these are the best cookies in the whole world," Charlotte would say, chocolate chips smeared across her cheeks. "Can you teach me how to make bread?" Ava would ask, standing on a chair beside me, her little hands covered in flour. "More, more," Michael would demand, reaching for another muffin with his chubby toddler fingers. Their joy was infectious. For the first time in years, I felt useful. Not useful in the way that keeping house was useful, but useful in a way that brought happiness to others, that created something beautiful and delicious and special. I started experimenting again, trying new recipes, adapting old ones. I'd put the kids down for naps and lose myself in the rhythm of mixing and kneading and shaping dough into something wonderful. It was during one of these afternoon baking sessions that my mama called. "Baby girl," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "You sound different, happy." "I've been baking again, Mama, just small stuff, but it's feeding your soul," she finished. "I can hear it in your voice." We talked for an hour that day, while the kids slept and bread rose in the oven. We talked about recipes and techniques, about the satisfaction of creating something with your own hands, about the way food can carry love and memory and tradition from one generation to the next. "You know," Mama said as our conversation wound down, "your daddy and I have been talking. We've been worried about you." "Worried? Why?" There was a long pause. "Baby girl, when's the last time we saw you? Really saw you, not just at family gatherings where you're running around taking care of everyone else." I thought about it. When was the last time I'd had a real conversation with my parents? When was the last time I'd visited them without William and the kids, just to spend time together? I couldn't remember. "We love William," Mama continued carefully, "and we love those grandbabies more than life itself, but we miss our daughter." Our daughter. When was the last time someone had seen me as an individual, not just as an extension of someone else? "Why don't you bring the kids over this weekend?" she suggested. "We'll make it a real old-fashioned baking day, like when you were little. Teach them some of the recipes your grandmother taught us." That Saturday, I loaded the kids in the car and drove to my parents' house. William was playing golf with his friends, and for once, I didn't feel guilty about not staying home to have his dinner ready when he got back. My parents' house felt like coming home to myself. The kitchen was warm and welcoming, filled with the scents of cinnamon and vanilla and all the spices that had shaped my childhood. Mama had ingredients laid out for 3 different recipes, and my daddy was already down on the floor, letting the kids climb all over him like he was their personal jungle gym. "All right, my little bakers," Mama announced. "Today, we're going to learn how to make magic." And for the next 4 hours, that's exactly what we did. We made magic. Ava learned how to knead dough, her little arms working seriously as Mama guided her hands.
Charlotte helped measure ingredients, her tongue poking out in concentration as she tried to get each cup exactly right. Michael sat in his high chair, happily covered in flour, banging wooden spoons together like drums. And I remembered who I used to be. I remembered the joy of creating something beautiful, the satisfaction of passing on traditions, the pride in watching someone taste something you'd made and see their face light up with pleasure. "You still got it, baby girl," Mama said quietly as we watched the kids decorate cookies with way too much frosting and sprinkles. "That magic touch, it's still there." That night, we all piled onto my parents' couch and watched movies while eating our cookies. The kids fell asleep one by one, and I found myself talking to my parents, really talking for the first time in years. "I feel like I'm losing myself," I admitted as we sat in the dim light of their living room. "Like every day, a little bit of who I used to be just disappears." My daddy, who had been quiet most of the evening, spoke up. "Baby, marriage is supposed to make you more yourself, not less. A good partner builds you up, not tears you down." "William doesn't tear me down," I said automatically, defensively. He has high standards." My parents exchanged a look. "High standards for you, maybe. But what about high standards for himself? Does he hold himself to the same expectations he has for you?" I thought about that question for a long time. Did he? When William came home to a messy house, he blamed me for not managing it better. But when he left his clothes on the floor, his dishes in the sink, his papers scattered across every surface, that was just normal. When I was tired or stressed or overwhelmed, I needed to try harder, manage better, do more. But when he was tired or stressed, I needed to make things easier for him, cater to his needs, accommodate his mood. "It's just, he works so hard," I said weakly. "So do you, baby girl," Daddy said quietly. "Raising 3 children, managing a household, taking care of everyone's needs, that's work too. Important work." Important work. When was the last time William had acknowledged that what I did was important? I drove home that night with my kids sleeping in the back seat and my heart full of conflicting emotions. I felt more like myself than I had in years, but I also felt guilty about that feeling. Shouldn't being a wife and mother be enough? Shouldn't I be satisfied with the life I'd built? But as I pulled into our driveway and saw William's car already there, saw the lights on in the house, I felt that familiar tightening in my chest again. The return to reality, to expectations, to the constant measuring of myself against standards I could never quite meet. William was in the living room when I came in, carrying sleeping children. He glanced up from his laptop, but didn't offer to help. "How was your day?" I whispered as I settled Michael into his crib. "Fine. I grabbed dinner with the guys after golf." He didn't ask about my day, didn't ask about the kids, didn't comment on the fact that we'd been gone all day. After I got everyone settled, I went to the kitchen to clean up the dinner dishes William had left in the sink. As I loaded the dishwasher, I found myself thinking about the conversation with my parents. High standards for me, but what about for himself? Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention to our dynamic in a way I never had before. And what I saw broke my heart. I was doing everything. I got up with the kids every morning, made breakfast for everyone, packed William's lunch, got the children ready for their day. I cleaned the house, did the laundry, ran errands, managed appointments, handled school communications, planned meals, did the grocery shopping. When William came home, I had dinner ready. I managed the evening routine, baths, homework help, bedtime stories, getting everyone settled. I cleaned up after dinner, prepared for the next day, made sure William's clothes were ready for work. And what did William do? He went to work, came home, ate the dinner I prepared, and relaxed. He played with the kids when he felt like it, helped with bedtime when it was convenient, contributed to the household when I specifically asked him to. But it was all optional for him. Everything was required for me, but optional for him. When I was sick, I still had to take care of the children because they need their routine. When William was sick, he stayed in bed all day while I managed everything, plus brought him soup and medicine. When I was tired, I needed to push through because that's what mothers do. When William was tired, everyone had to be quiet so he could rest. When I made a mistake, forgot something at the store, burned dinner, let the kids get too loud, it was a failure that reflected on my competence. When William made a mistake, it was just one of those things that happens. The realization was devastating and liberating at the same time. I wasn't failing at being a wife and mother. I was succeeding brilliantly at an impossible job, while my partner contributed the bare minimum and still managed to make me feel like I wasn't doing enough. But knowing something and changing it are two very different things. I tried talking to William about it one evening after the kids were in bed. I've been thinking, I started carefully, about how we divide responsibilities around here. He looked up from his phone. What do you mean? I mean, I handle pretty much everything related to the house and kids. Maybe we could share some of those tasks. His expression shifted to that patient, condescending look I'd come to dread. Sophia, I work 50 hours a week to support this family. When I come home, I need to be able to relax. But I work too. Taking care of 3 children, managing a household, that's work. It's different, he said dismissively. What I do requires education, training, expertise. What you do is natural, instinctive. Women are just better at that stuff. Natural. Instinctive. As if managing a household and raising children required no skill, no intelligence, no effort. What if I wanted to go back to work? I asked quietly. Part-time, maybe. The kids are old enough now. Absolutely not. His voice was sharp, final. We've discussed this, Sophia. The children need stability. They need their mother. But maybe. No. He stood up, ending the conversation. This is what's best for our family. I work, you take care of the home. That's how successful marriages work. Successful marriages. Was that what we had? That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while William slept peacefully beside me. I thought about the conversation, about his casual dismissal in my needs, my thoughts, my worth beyond my utility to him and the children. And I realized something that scared me. I was starting to hate my life. Not my children, never my children, but the life I build around servicing everyone else's needs while ignoring my own. I was 34 years old and I felt ancient, worn down, used up. Something had to change. But change, I would learn, was more complicated than I imagined. Because while I was slowly awakening to the reality of my situation, William was apparently planning changes of his own. Changes that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my life, and my worth. Changes that started with longer hours at the office, more business trips, more nights out with clients. Changes that should have been warning signs if I'd known what to look for. But I was so busy trying to be the perfect wife and mother, so focused on meeting everyone else's needs, that I missed the signs that my husband was already planning his exit strategy. I missed the new clothes, the sudden interest in fitness, the way he'd start criticizing my appearance more frequently. I missed the phone calls he'd take in another room, the way he'd guard his phone, the mysterious text messages that made him smile in ways that had nothing to do with me. I missed it all because I was too busy trying to save a marriage that was already over in his mind. But some secrets have a way of revealing themselves, don't they? Some lies are too big to hide forever. And Emma Johnson, with her designer clothes and her fancy job and her complete lack of respect for anyone she considered beneath her, was about to become the catalyst for the most painful and the most liberating experience of my life. She was about to teach me that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is also the best thing that can happen to you. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what you're really worth. And what I was worth, as William and Emma were about to discover, was far more. What's going on, Mama? You remember when you got married, how your daddy and I gave you that inheritance money? Of course I remembered. $78,000 that had been sitting in a savings account since I was 18, money my grandmother had left me that my parents had invested wisely over the years. They'd given it to me as a wedding gift. Yes, ma'am. Well, baby, you remember how you never told William about it? That was true. In all the excitement of the wedding and moving in together, I'd somehow never mentioned the inheritance to William. It wasn't intentional secrecy, it just never came up. And then as time passed, it felt awkward to bring up, like I'd been keeping a secret, even though I hadn't meant to. I remember. And you remember how I asked if I could help you invest it since you weren't working and didn't have time to manage it yourself? A cold feeling started growing in my stomach. Mama, what did you do? She laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who'd been keeping a secret for too long. Baby girl, I started a bakery with that money. In your name. The world seemed to tilt sideways. What kind of business, Mama? A bakery, Sophia. I started a bakery. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. A bakery? I know. I should have asked first. But you were so unhappy, baby, and I could see how much you missed baking. And I thought maybe someday you'd want to come back to it. So I wanted to make sure you had something to come back to. Mama, my voice came out as barely a whisper. It started small, just me renting kitchen space at night, making pastries to sell to coffee shops. I used your grandmother's recipes, the ones you love so much. But Sophia, baby, it grew. It grew bigger than I ever imagined. I was still trying to process what she was telling me. My mother had started a bakery with my money in my name. How big? I asked, managing to ask. There was a long pause. Baby girl, we have 12 locations across Detroit now. We employ over 200 people. We're the biggest bakery operation in the city. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. 200 employees, 12 locations, the biggest bakery operation in Detroit. I picked up the phone with shaking hands. Mama, are you telling me? I'm telling you that you own a multi-million-dollar business, baby girl. I'm telling you that all those years you've been thinking you had nothing, you've actually had everything. Multi-million-dollar business. I couldn't even form the words in my head, much less say them out loud. But I don't know anything about running a business, I said weakly. You don't have to know everything, Mama said gently. That's what managers are for. That's what employees are for. I've been handling the day-to-day operations, but baby, it's your company. Your name is on everything. You're the owner and CEO. CEO, owner. I was sitting in my living room in yoga pants with baby food stains, folding tiny clothes, and my mother was telling me I was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. Why now? Why are you telling me this now? Another pause. Because I can see what's happening to you, Sophia. I can see how small you're becoming, how invisible you feel. And I wanted you to know that you're not invisible. You're not powerless. You have options. Options. I'd forgotten what that word meant. I need to see you, I said suddenly. I need to see this business. I was hoping you'd say that. Can you come by tomorrow? I'll show you everything. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about what Mama had told me, trying to make sense of it. A bakery. My bakery. 12 locations, 200 employees, the biggest bakery operation in Detroit? I was somebody. I had something. I wasn't just William's wife or the kid's mother. I was a business owner. The next morning, after I dropped the kids at school, I drove to the address Mama had given me. It was in a part of Detroit I didn't know well, an industrial area with lots of warehouses and office buildings. But when I pulled up to the address, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The building was huge, modern, professional. There was a sign out front that made my heart stop. Sweet Dreams Bakery, Detroit's premier baking company. Sweet Dreams, my childhood nickname, what Mama used to call me when I'd fall asleep in the kitchen while she baked. I sat in my car for 10 minutes just staring at the building. My building, my company. Finally, I worked up the courage to go inside. The reception area was beautiful, clean, modern, with the warm smell of baking bread and pastries filling the air. There was a young woman at the front desk who smiled brightly when I walked in. "Good morning. Are you here to see Mrs. Brown?"
Mrs. Brown, my mama, who was apparently running my company. "Yes, please. I'm Sophia Smith." Her eyes widened. "Oh my goodness! You're Mrs. Smith! We've heard so much about you. Your mother is so proud. Let me call her right away." Mama appeared within minutes, wearing a professional blazer and a smile bigger than I'd seen in years. She hugged me tight, and I could feel her trembling with excitement. "Welcome to your company, baby girl." The tour that followed was like walking through a dream. We had a state-of-the-art commercial kitchen with equipment I'd only ever fantasized about. We had a product development lab where bakers tested new recipes. We had offices filled with people managing sales, marketing, distribution, human resources. We had delivery trucks with our logo, my logo, driving all over Detroit, supplying restaurants, coffee shops, grocery stores, catering companies. "We make everything," Mama explained as we walked through the production floor. "Bread, pastries, wedding cakes, corporate catering. We even have a wholesale operation that supplies other bakeries." Other bakeries. We supplied other bakeries? "Mama," I said suddenly, "do we supply bakeries that aren't ours?" "Of course, baby. We're a wholesale supplier to dozens of independent bakeries and restaurants across the city." A thought was forming in my head. A terrible, wonderful, impossible thought. What about other big bakery chains? Do we supply them too? Mama looked confused by the question. "Well, yes. There are a few larger operations that buy from us." "Why?" "Can you show me a list of our clients?" She led me to an office where a woman was working on a computer. "Jennifer, can you pull up our client list for my daughter?" Jennifer, my employee, smiled and pulled up a screen full of names. I scanned the list, looking for something specific, hoping I was wrong, but somehow knowing I wasn't. And there it was, halfway down the page. Golden Crust Enterprises. My blood ran cold. "Mama, what is Golden Crust Enterprises?" Jennifer answered before Mama could. "Oh, they're one of our biggest clients. They run about 15 bakery locations around the city. Very successful operation. We supply most of their bread and pastries." 15 locations. Very successful. "Do you know who manages their operations?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. "Sure," Jennifer said, clicking on the account details. "Emma Johnson. She's actually been trying to negotiate better wholesale prices lately. Very aggressive negotiator." Emma Johnson. The woman my husband was having an affair with, because by now I was certain that's what was happening, was the manager of a bakery chain that bought products from my company.
She was essentially working for me, and she didn't even know it. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, where I sat on the closed toilet seat and tried to process what I'd just learned. My husband was cheating on me with a woman who unknowingly worked for me, a woman who thought she was successful and independent, but who was actually dependent on my business for her success. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. When I came back out, Mama was waiting for me with concern in her eyes. "Baby, you look like you've seen a ghost." "I think I have," I said quietly. I spent the rest of the day learning about my business, and what I learned was incredible. Sweet Dreams Bakery was more than successful. It was thriving. We had contracts with major grocery chains, hotels, restaurants. We employed over 200 people, and any of them single mothers that Mama had specifically hired because she wanted to help women support their families. "Your grandmother would be so proud," Mama said as we sat in my office, late that afternoon. "She always said you had magic in your hands when it came to baking." Magic. There was that word again. "But Mama, I haven't baked professionally in 8 years. I don't know how to run a business. I don't know anything about finances or operations or—" "Baby girl," she interrupted gently. "You think I knew all that when we started? You think anyone starts a business knowing everything?" She was right, of course, but still. "Besides," she continued gently, "you don't have to know everything. You have good people working for you. You have me helping you, and you have something that can't be taught. You have the gift." The gift. My ability to create magic with flour and sugar and butter. "I want to learn," I said suddenly. "I want to learn how to really run this company." Mama's face lit up. "I was hoping you'd say that." Over the next few months, I began living a double life. During the day, while the kids were at school, I went to my company. I learned about profit margins and supply chain management. I tasted new products and approved marketing campaigns. I met with employees and suppliers and customers. I was good at it. Really good. Turns out managing a household with 3 children had actually taught me quite a bit about organization, multitasking, and problem solving. But more than that, I loved it. I loved feeling useful in a way that went beyond keeping everyone else's life running smoothly. I loved making decisions that mattered, solving problems that challenged me, creating something that brought joy to thousands of people every day. For the first time in years, I felt alive. But I kept it secret from William. I told myself it was because I wasn't ready to explain it yet, because the situation was too complicated, because I needed to understand everything before I could make him understand. Really, though, I think I kept it secret because some part of me knew our marriage was ending, and I needed to protect this new part of myself. And I was right to keep it secret, because William's behavior was getting worse.
He was barely home anymore. When he was home, he was distracted, always on his phone, always finding reasons to leave again quickly. And he was becoming crueler. "Sophia, this house is a mess," he'd say when he walked in, even if I'd spent all day cleaning. "What exactly do you do all day?" he'd ask when dinner wasn't ready exactly when he wanted it. "Otherwise managed to keep themselves up," he'd comment when I'd be in comfortable clothes after a long day with the kids. The criticism was constant, cutting, designed to make me feel small and worthless. But here's the thing, it wasn't working anymore. Because during the day, I was Sophia Smith, CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. I was someone people respected, someone whose opinion mattered, someone who made important decisions that affected hundreds of lives. It's hard to make someone feel worthless when they know they're worth millions. Not that William knew any of this. As far as he was concerned, I was still the same dependent housewife I'd always been, which is why he felt comfortable doing what he did next. It was a Thursday evening in November. The kids were upstairs doing homework, and I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when William came home. But instead of his usual distracted greeting, he actually seemed to want to talk. "Sophia," he said, sitting down at the kitchen table, "we need to discuss something." I turned from the stove, spatula in hand. "What's that?" "Money. Our finances." This was strange. William never discussed finances with me. He handled all the money, all the bills, all the financial decisions. I had access to our joint account for groceries and household expenses, but that was it. "Okay," I said carefully. "Things are tight," he said, running his hair through his hands. "Tighter than I'd like. The kids are getting older, expenses are increasing, and my salary, well, it's not growing as fast as our costs." This was news to me. William had always presented himself as very successful, very secure financially. The house, the cars, the lifestyle we maintained, none of it had ever seemed like a strain. "What are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying we need to make some changes, cut some expenses, maybe downsize." "Downsize? You want to sell the house?" "Maybe, or maybe..." He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Maybe you need to start contributing financially." There it was. After 8 years of insisting that I stay home, that the children needed their mother, that my job was to take care of the family, he wanted me to get a job. "William, I haven't worked in 8 years. I don't have any recent experience, any professional references." "You'll figure it out," he said dismissively. "Other women manage to work and raise children. It's time you pulled your weight." Pulled my weight. As if raising his children and managing his household wasn't pulling my weight. But here's what William didn't know. I was already pulling way more than my weight. I was pulling the weight of a multi-million-dollar business that he couldn't even imagine. "What kind of work did you have in mind?" I asked, curious to see where this was going. "I don't know, maybe retail, maybe food service, something entry level that you could get without much experience." Entry level, minimum wage. After 8 years of marriage, after 3 children, after sacrificing my career and my dreams for his vision of family life, he thought I was worth minimum wage? "And what about the children?" I asked. "Who's going to take care of them while I'm at work?" He shrugged. "Daycare, after-school programs, they'll adapt." They'll adapt. The same children who needed their mother so desperately that I couldn't even consider part-time work were now expected to adapt to daycare so that I could work minimum wage to supplement his income? "I thought you said the children needed stability, that they needed their mother home with them." "That was different," he said impatiently. "That was when we could afford for you to stay home. Now we can't." Different.
It was different now because now he needed my financial contribution. When it served his purposes for me to be dependent, my place was in the home. When it served his purposes for me to be working, I needed to pull my weight. I was beginning to see the pattern. I'll think about it, I said, which was true. I would think about it. I would think about how ironic it was that he was asking me to get a job when I already owned a company that probably generated more revenue in a month than he made in a year. That night, after William went to bed, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and really thought about my situation. My husband was having an affair. I was sure of it now. All the signs were there. The late nights, the business trips, the sudden dissatisfaction with me, the emotional distance, the cruelty. He was probably planning to leave me. The conversation about money, about me getting a job, was probably his way of preparing me to be financially independent so that when he asked for a divorce, I wouldn't be completely helpless. How thoughtful of him. But what William didn't realize was that I wasn't helpless. I wasn't the dependent, worthless woman he thought I was. I was the owner of the most successful bakery company in Detroit. I employed over 200 people. I generated millions of dollars in revenue. And his mistress, because I was certain now that's what Emma Johnson was, worked for me. The situation would have been funny if it weren't so heartbreaking. Over the next few weeks, I began preparing for what I knew was coming. Not the way William expected me to prepare. Not by looking for minimum wage jobs or figuring out daycare arrangements. I prepared by learning everything I could about my business, about my finances, about my rights. I met with lawyers, not to discuss divorce, but to discuss business protection. I met with accountants to understand exactly what I was worth. I met with financial advisors to plan for different scenarios. What I learned was astounding. Sweet Dreams Bakery was worth approximately $12 million. $12 million! My personal net worth, including my stake in the company, plus the real estate and equipment and investments, was approximately $8 million. $8 million. I, Sophia Smith, the woman my husband thought was worth minimum wage, was worth $8 million. I had more money than William could probably make in his entire career. I had more financial security than most people could dream of. And I'd had it all along, growing quietly in the background while I was being made to feel worthless and dependent. But the most delicious irony was yet to come. During one of my visits to the company, I was reviewing our client accounts when I noticed something interesting about Golden Crust Enterprises, Emma Johnson's company. They were behind on their payments. Significantly behind. How long have they been late on their account? I asked Jennifer, our accounts receivable manager. About 3 months now, she said, pulling up the details. They keep promising payment is coming, but, well, Ms. Johnson keeps asking for extended terms, larger credit lines, better pricing. It's like she's trying to squeeze every penny she can out of the deal. 3 months behind. That was a lot of money, nearly $50,000. What's our usual policy for accounts that are this far behind? I asked Jennifer. Normally, we'd suspend deliveries until the account is current, Jennifer said. But Ms. Johnson keeps insisting they're good for it, that they just need a little more time. I thought about this for a moment. Emma Johnson, my husband's successful, independent mistress, was struggling financially. Her business was surviving on credit from my company, and she was apparently desperate to keep that credit flowing. I want to meet with her, I said suddenly. Jennifer looked surprised. You want to meet with a delinquent client personally? Sometimes, I said, thinking fast, personal attention can resolve these situations more effectively than threatening letters. It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was that I wanted to see this woman. I wanted to understand her, who she was, what she had that I apparently lacked, why my husband chose her over me. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted her to know exactly who she was dealing with. The meeting was arranged for the following Tuesday. Emma Johnson would come to Sweet Dreams Bakery headquarters to discuss her account and hopefully arrange a payment plan. I spent the weekend preparing, not just for the business discussion, but for the emotional reality of coming face to face with my husband's mistress. I wasn't planning to confront her about the affair. I wasn't even sure how much I wanted her to know about who I was, but I wanted to see her, to understand her, to look into the eyes of the woman who was helping to destroy my marriage. Tuesday morning, I dressed carefully, professional but not flashy, confident but not intimidating. I wanted to look like what I was, a successful business owner, without making it obvious that this was more than just business. Emma Johnson arrived exactly on time. I watched from my office window as she got out of her car, a BMW that was nice, but not new, I noticed. She was dressed in designer clothes that looked expensive, but somehow trying too hard. She was beautiful, I had to admit. Tall, thin, perfectly made up, every hair in place. She looked like success, even if the reality was apparently more complicated. When Jennifer brought her to my office, I stood up behind my desk and extended my hand. Ms. Johnson, I'm Sophia Smith, owner and CEO of Sweet Dreams Bakery. Thank you for coming in today. I watched her face carefully as I said my name, looking for any sign of recognition, but there was nothing. She had no idea who I was. Miss Smith, she said, shaking my hand with a firm grip, I have to say, I'm surprised the owner wanted to meet with me personally. Usually these things are handled by, well, lower level staff. Lower level staff. Already, she was trying to establish some sort of hierarchy where she was important enough to warrant my personal attention. I like to handle significant accounts personally, especially when there are complications, I said smoothly, gesturing for her to sit down. She settled into the chair across from my desk, crossing her legs and arranging herself like she was posing for a photograph. I appreciate that, she said. I know our account has been a little delayed lately, but I want to assure you that Golden Crust is a very successful operation. We're just going through a temporary cash flow situation. Temporary cash flow situation. That was an interesting way to describe being 3 months behind. I understand these things happen. Can you give me a better sense of your timeline for bringing the account current? She shifted in her chair, and for just a moment, I saw a crack in her confident facade. Well, the thing is, we're expecting a major influx of capital very soon. There's some changes happening in my personal life that will significantly improve my financial situation. Changes in her personal life. I almost laughed. She was talking about my husband like he was some kind of financial windfall. What kind of changes? I asked, genuinely curious to hear how she'd explain it. I'd rather not go into details, but let's just say I'll be soon in a position to not only catch up on our account, but to significantly expand our business relationship. Soon be in a position, because she was planning to marry my husband and get access to what she thought was his money. That's wonderful, I said. I'm always happy to hear about our clients' success. What line of business is this new capital coming from? She smiled in a way that was probably supposed to be mysterious, but just looked smug. Finance. Very lucrative finance work. Finance. Williamsfield. Well, I hope everything works out well for you. In the meantime, though, we do need to address the outstanding balance on your account. Her smile faltered slightly. Of course, I was hoping we could work out some kind of arrangement, maybe extended terms or a payment plan.
What kind of arrangement did you have in mind? Well, she said, leaning forward like she was sharing a secret, I was thinking that maybe we could reduce the outstanding balance in exchange for a guarantee of increased future business. I mean, once my financial situation improves, I'll be in a position to place much larger orders. She wanted me to forgive her debt in exchange for promises of future business that would depend on money she expected to get from divorcing my husband. The audacity was breathtaking. That's an interesting proposal, I said, but I'm not sure I understand the logic. Why would I reduce what you owe me now in exchange for promises of future purchases? She looked confused, like she'd expected me to jump at this obviously terrible deal. Well, because it would be good for both of us. You'd have a guaranteed major client, and I'd be able to resolve this temporary situation. Temporary situation. There was that phrase again. Miss Johnson, I said gently, you realize that what you're proposing is essentially asking me to give you a significant discount on products you've already received and used? I wouldn't put it that way, she said quickly. I'd call it an investment in our future business relationship. An investment. She wanted me to invest in her ability to steal my husband. I leaned back in my chair and really looked at her. This woman, who thought she was so sophisticated and successful, was sitting in my office asking me to subsidize her affair with my husband. And she had no idea. Let me ask you something. What makes you so confident that your financial situation is going to improve so dramatically? She hesitated, clearly wanting to brag, but not wanting to reveal too much. Let's just say that I have very good prospects, very reliable prospects. Reliable prospects. My husband, who she thought was wealthy and successful, when in reality, his income was probably a fraction of what my company generated in a month. I see, I said. Well, that's certainly encouraging, but you understand that I have to make decisions based on current reality, not future possibilities. Her confident mask was starting to slip. Of course, but I was hoping you'd be willing to work with me. I mean, we've been good clients. Good clients who were 3 months behind on payments and asking for free money. I agreed. You have been valued clients, which is why I wanted to meet with you personally rather than simply suspending your account. Suspending our account? Her voice went up a notch. You can't do that. We have contracts, commitments to our customers, which I'm sure you'll honor. The question is whether you'll honor your commitments to us as well. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to decide whether to continue the charm offensive or switch to intimidation. She chose intimidation. Look, I don't think you understand how important our account is to your business. We place very large orders. We're growing rapidly. We bring you significant revenue. You really don't want to alienate us over a small timing issue. Small timing issue. $50,000 and 3 months of non-payment was a small timing issue. Miss Johnson, I said, maintaining my calm tone, our account records show that Golden Crest represents approximately 0.8% of our total revenue. While we value every client, I think you may be overestimating your importance to our overall business. 0.8%? She said quickly. That can't be right. I'm afraid it is. Sweet Dreams Bakery generates approximately $15 million in annual revenue. Your account, even when current, represents about $120,000 annually. I watched her do the math, watched her realize that what seemed like big numbers to her were actually quite small in the context of my business.
15 million? She repeated weakly. Give or take, I said casually. We've been very fortunate. The Detroit market has been very good to us. She was staring at me now like she was seeing me for the first time. The woman she assumed was just another small business owner scrambling for every account was actually running a $15 million operation. I had no idea Sweet Dreams was so large, she said. Most people don't. We prefer to focus on our work rather than self-promotion. Unlike some people, I didn't say, but the implication was clear. So, I continued, given the relative size of your account, I think you can understand why I'm not in a position to make the kind of concessions you're requesting. If your financial situation is really going to improve as dramatically as you suggest, then bringing your account current shouldn't be a problem. She was trapped, and she knew it. She had tried to present herself as important enough to warrant special treatment, and I just showed her exactly how unimportant she was to my business. How current do you need the account to be? She asked quietly. Fully current. All outstanding balances paid within 30 days, or we'll have to suspend further deliveries. 30 days? Her voice cracked slightly. I don't know if that's possible. I'm sorry to hear that, and I almost meant it. Not for her, but for the situation she had created for herself. Perhaps you should speak to your reliable financial prospects about accelerating their timeline. She looked at me desperately. Isn't there anything else we can work out? Some other arrangement? I pretended to think about it. Well, there is one possibility. Hope flashed in her eyes. What's that? We could set up a payment plan, say $10,000 immediately to show good faith, and then the remainder paid off over 6 months. But that would require a personal guarantee from you, and we'd have to reduce your credit terms for future orders. $10,000 immediately. Money she clearly didn't have, or she wouldn't be 3 months behind in the first place.
10,000 right away, she asked. That would be the minimum to keep your account active, I confirmed. She was quiet for a long moment, thinking. I could almost see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out how to get her hands on that money. Could I have a few days to arrange that? She asked finally. Of course. Shall we say by Friday? That gave her 3 days to come up with money she didn't have or to convince my husband to give it to her. Friday should be fine, she said, but she didn't sound confident. Excellent, I said, standing up. I'll have our accounting department prepare the paperwork for the payment plan. She stood too, smoothing down her skirt and trying to regain some of her earlier composure. Ms. Smith, she said, I have to say, you're not what I expected. Oh, what were you expecting? She hesitated. I guess I expected someone older, more traditional. Most business owners in this industry are. Men? I suggested. Well, yes. I smiled. I find that people often underestimate what women are capable of. It can be quite useful, actually. She looked at me sharply, like she suspected there was a deeper meaning in my words, which there was, of course, but she couldn't possibly guess what it was. I'm sure, she said carefully. I walked her to the door of my office. It was very nice meeting you, Miss Johnson. I look forward to resolving this account situation quickly. Yes, she said. Me too. After she left, I sat back down at my desk and thought about the meeting. Emma Johnson was exactly what I'd expected. Beautiful, confident on the surface, but ultimately not nearly as successful or important as she pretended to be. She was also desperate. Desperate enough to ask for special favors from a business partner, desperate enough to make promises she couldn't keep, desperate enough to bank her future on a man who probably had far less money she imagined. Over the next few days, I waited to see what would happen. Would she come up with the money? Would she approach William for help? Would she miss the deadline and lose her account? I didn't have to wait long to find out. On Wednesday evening, William came home in an unusually good mood. He was whistling, which was something he never did anymore.
and he actually kissed my cheek when he walked into the kitchen. "You seem happy," I observed. "Just a good day," he said. "Hey, I need to ask you something." Here it comes, I thought. "I have a friend who's in a bit of financial bind. Nothing serious, just a temporary cash flow problem. She needs to borrow about $10,000 for a few days." He didn't even try to hide the gender. "That's a lot of money," I said carefully. "Not really. I mean, it's significant, but it's not like we don't have it, and she's good for it. She just needs to bridge a gap until some other money comes through." Bridge a gap. Exactly the same language Emma had used. What kind of business is this friend in? Food service. She manages a chain of bakeries. Very successful operation. Very successful operation. If only he knew. And she can't get this money from a bank or from her business? William waved dismissively. "You know how banks are. All that paperwork, credit checks, waiting periods. This is just a short-term thing between friends." Friends. Is that what they were calling it? $10,000 is a lot of money to lend to a friend. What if something happens and she can't pay it back? "She'll pay it back," William said firmly. "I trust her completely." He trusted her completely. His wife of 8 years, he criticized constantly. His mistress of God knows how long, he trusted completely. "I don't know, William. That's a significant amount of our savings." "Sophia," he said, and his voice took on that patient, condescending tone I knew so well. "Sometimes you have to help people out. This woman has been very kind to me. She's helped me through some difficult times." Helped him through difficult times. What difficult times? The difficulty of being married to me? "What kind of difficult times?" I asked. He looked uncomfortable. "Just work stress, personal stuff. She's been a good friend." A good friend who needed $10,000 and just so happened to be in the same business that my company supplied. "I still don't feel comfortable lending that much money to someone I don't even know." "You don't have to know her," William said, his voice getting sharper. "You have to trust me. I'm asking you to trust my judgment." Trust his judgment, the judgment that had led him into an affair with a woman who was broke and desperate. "Can I meet her first?" I asked. "If we're lending her that much money, I'd like to know who we're dealing with." "No," he said quickly. "That would be awkward. She's embarrassed enough about needing the money. Having to meet my wife and explain her situation would be humiliating for her." Humiliating. Having to meet the wife of the man she was sleeping with would be humiliating. "Then I'm not comfortable with it," I said. William's face darkened. "Sophia, I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you what I'm going to do." "With our money?" I challenged. "With my money," he corrected. "Money that I earned. Money that supports this family." His money. The money he earned while I took care of everything else that made his earning possible. "Fine," I said quietly, "but I want it in writing. A formal loan agreement with terms for repayment." "That's not necessary." "It is to me," I interrupted. "If you're going to lend $10,000 of our family's money to someone I'm not allowed to meet, then I want legal documentation." He stared at me for a long moment. I think he was surprised by my insistence, by my refusal to simply go along with what he wanted. "Fine," he said finally. "I'll have her sign something. And I want to see it before the money changes hands." "Sophia, those are my terms, William. Take them or leave them." We stared at each other across the kitchen, and I could see him trying to decide whether to push harder or give in. He gave in. "Fine, I'll get something in writing." That Friday, true to his word, William presented me with a loan agreement. It was hastily typed and obviously done on his computer, but it had all the relevant details. $10,000, to be repaid within 60 days, signed by Emma Johnson. Emma Johnson. He didn't even try to hide her name. I read the agreement carefully, noting the address listed for her, a nice neighborhood, but not as nice as ours, the phone number, the signature that matched the one I'd seen on contracts at my company. This looks acceptable, I said, handing it back to him. Good, he said, clearly relieved. I'll get her the money today. So William gave Emma Johnson $10,000 of our money, which was actually my money since I was worth 8 times what he thought our family had, to pay a debt to my company. The irony was so perfect, it was almost artistic. Emma made her payments on time, bringing her accounts current, and for the next month, everything seemed to go back to normal. She was ordering regularly, paying on time, and apparently able to keep her business running. But I was watching carefully, and what I saw was that Golden Crust was struggling more than Emma wanted to admit. Their orders were getting smaller, not larger. They were switching to cheaper product lines. They were stretching their payment terms as far as possible without technically being late. Emma Johnson's very successful operation was dying slowly. Meanwhile, William was spending more and more time away from home, more business trips, more late nights, more weekend work sessions. And he was getting more critical of me. Sophia, when's the last time you went to a salon? He asked one morning as I was making breakfast for the kids. I looked down at my hair, which I'd pulled back in a simple ponytail. It was clean and neat, but it wasn't styled. I don't know, it's been a while. It shows, he said bluntly. You used to take care of yourself. I used to have time to take care of myself. I used to have a life that included more than just serving everyone else's needs. Maybe you should make an appointment, he continued. Do something about this. He gestured vaguely at my appearance. Do something about this. The way I looked was apparently a problem that needed to be solved. I'll think about it, I said, which was becoming my standard response to his suggestions. Don't think about it, do it. Make an appointment this week. This week. Like going to a salon was somehow urgent business that couldn't be delayed. William, salons are expensive. I'll give you money for it, he said impatiently. Just make an effort. Make an effort. Because obviously taking care of 3 children in a household while running a secret multi-million-dollar business wasn't effort enough. That afternoon, while the kids were at school, I did go to a salon, but not because William told me to. I went because I was tired of looking in the mirror and seeing someone I didn't recognize. I was tired of feeling invisible, even to myself. The salon I chose was expensive, the kind of place I'd never have felt comfortable going to before, but I wasn't the same person I'd been before. What are we doing today? Asked the stylist, a young woman named Mia who looked at my hair like it was a puzzle she was excited to solve. I want to look like myself again, I said. And who is that? She asked. Good question. Who was I? Someone who knows her worth, I said finally. Mia smiled. I can work with that. 3 hours later, I walked out of that salon looking like a different person. My hair was cut in a modern style that framed my face beautifully. It was highlighted with warm tones that brought out my eyes. It was professional, but not severe, stylish, but not trying too hard. I looked successful, confident, like someone who mattered. When I picked up the kids from school, they barely recognized me. Mama, Charlotte exclaimed, you look like a movie star. You look so pretty, Mama, Ava said, hugging my legs. Even Michael, my little boy who rarely noticed anything that wasn't a truck or a superhero, looked at me with wide eyes. Pretty Mama, he said. Their reactions made me feel beautiful in a way I hadn't felt in years. not beautiful because someone else approved of how I looked, but beautiful because I approved of how I looked. That evening, when William came home, he stopped short when he saw me. "Wow," he said. That's quite a change." "Do you like it?" I asked, though I realized I didn't really care what his answer was. "It's very different," he said carefully. "Very professional." Professional. As if looking professional was somehow a bad thing. "Thank you," I said, taking it as a compliment, whether he meant it as one or not. Over the next few weeks, I began making other changes. Small ones mostly, but changes that added up to something bigger. I bought new clothes, not expensive designer things, but well-made pieces that fit properly and made me feel confident. I started wearing makeup again, not every day, but when I felt like it. I began taking better care of myself in general. But the biggest change was internal. I was starting to remember who I was beyond my roles as wife and mother. I was someone who'd built a successful business, someone who employed hundreds of people, someone who made decisions that mattered. I was someone who had options. And William was beginning to notice that something was different about me. "You seem different lately," he said one evening as we were cleaning up after dinner. "Different how?" "I don't know. More independent, I guess." Independent. Coming from William, this wasn't a compliment. "Is that bad?" I asked. "It's just unexpected," he said. "You've never been particularly independent before." Particularly independent, as if independence was a character flaw. "People change," I said simply. "Do they?" he asked, and there was something in his tone that made me look at him more closely. "Yes," I said, "they do." We stared at each other for a moment, and I could see him trying to figure out what was different, what had changed, whether it was something he needed to worry about. It was, because I was no longer the woman who would accept being treated as less than I was worth. I was no longer the woman who would apologize for existing, who would make herself smaller to make others more comfortable. I was Sophia Smith, CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, and I was beginning to act like it. But William didn't know that yet. He couldn't see the big picture, couldn't understand what was really happening. All he knew was that his wife was changing in ways he couldn't control, and that threatened him. So, he did what men like William always do when they feel threatened by their wife's independence. He escalated his efforts to tear me down. The criticism became more frequent, more cutting, more designed to hurt. "You know, Sophia, just because you got your hair done doesn't mean you've actually changed. You're still the same person underneath." The same person, as if that was an insult. I am the same person. I'm just finally remembering who that person is. He didn't like that answer. Over the next few weeks, as we moved into December and Christmas approached, William became increasingly hostile. It was like he could sense that something fundamental had shifted in our relationship, even though he couldn't put his finger on what it was. And maybe he was feeling guilty about his affair. Maybe my growing confidence made it harder for him to justify what he was doing. Or maybe he was just preparing me for what was coming, because something was coming. I could feel it in the way he looked at me, the way he spoke to me, the way he seemed to be distancing himself even more than usual. I began to suspect that Christmas would be significant somehow, that whatever William was planning, whatever move he was preparing to make, it would happen during the holidays. I was right, of course, but even knowing something was coming, even being prepared for it, didn't make it hurt any less when it actually happened. Christmas morning, the day that would change everything. The day I would finally discover just how cruel my husband could be, just how deluded his mistress was, and just how powerful I really was. But before I tell you about that morning, let me tell you about Christmas Eve. The night before my world exploded, I lay in bed next to my husband, who was texting someone at 11 o'clock at night, and I made a decision. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever William threw at me, whatever demands he made, whatever ultimatums he gave me, I would not break. I would not beg or plead or promise to change. I would not accept being treated as worthless or disposable. I was Sophia Smith, and I knew exactly what I was worth. And if William wanted to find out the hard way, that was his choice. The woman who'd spent 8 years disappearing was about to reappear in a way that no one would see coming. But here's the thing, Emma. Firing you would be quick and clean. It would get you out of my sight and out of my company, but it wouldn't teach you anything about consequences. What do you mean? I mean that 3 days ago, you walked into my home on Christmas morning and told me I was worthless. You said I'd never contributed anything meaningful to my marriage. You called me an upgrade that needed to be replaced. You did all of this while working for me, while your paycheck was signed by the very woman you were trying to destroy. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her face was burning with shame. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to keep your job. Relief flooded her face. But, I said, and the relief disappeared, things are going to be very different from now on. Different how? Different in that you're going to understand exactly who you work for. Different in that every single day, you're going to be reminded that the woman you thought was beneath you is actually the reason you can pay your rent. She was staring at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. You're going to report directly to me from now on. Not to Jennifer, not to any other manager, to me. Every week, you're going to sit in this chair and tell me how you're running my business. Direct reporting to the woman she'd humiliated. And Emma, I'm going to be watching everything you do. Every decision, every interaction with customers and staff, every aspect of your performance. I'm going to be evaluating it all personally. I understand, she whispered. Do you? Because your judgment has been extremely poor lately. You thought you could steal my husband and take my place and that I'd just disappear. That suggests a serious misunderstanding of power dynamics. She flinched. So you're going to need to prove to me that you can make better decisions going forward, starting with your relationship with William. What about William? She asked, though I could see in her eyes that she already knew what I was going to say. What about him? You've committed to building a life with a man who makes $52,000 a year and has 3 children to support. Is that still the upgrade you thought you were getting? The reality was finally sinking in. Without my business subsidizing his lifestyle, William couldn't afford to maintain the life Emma thought she was stepping into. I made a mistake, she said quietly. You made several mistakes. The question is whether you're going to learn from them or keep making them. What would learning look like? It would look like you focusing on doing excellent work instead of trying to climb social ladders by destroying other women. It would look like you building your own value instead of trying to steal someone else's. And if I do that? If you do that, you'll keep your job. You'll keep your income. You'll keep the respect of your coworkers who don't know what you did to me. And if I don't? If you don't, you'll discover just how small Detroit's food service industry really is. Word travels fast about managers who make poor professional choices. The threat was subtle but clear. In a city where I owned the largest bakery operation and had connections throughout the industry, her career prospects would be very limited if she crossed me. "I won't let you down," she said. "No," I agreed. "You won't, because now you understand exactly what the consequences would be." Over the next few weeks, I watched Emma very carefully. Every report she submitted was scrutinized. Every decision she made was questioned. Every aspect of her job performance was evaluated with the intensity of someone whose career hung by a thread. Because that's exactly what it was. I wasn't being unfair or creating impossible standards, but I made sure she understood that her previous level of autonomy was gone. Every choice she made now had to be justified to the woman she tried to destroy. Meanwhile, the reality of William's situation was becoming clear to both of them. When the divorce proceedings revealed that he'd be walking away with less than $30,000 total, and that his take-home salary would barely cover basic living expenses, the fairy tale Emma thought she was stepping into crumbled. He couldn't afford the house they'd planned to live in. He couldn't afford to take her on the vacations he'd promised. He couldn't afford much of anything beyond a modest apartment and a reliable used car. The successful, wealthy man she thought she was getting turned out to be a man living paycheck to paycheck without his wife's business income to cushion his lifestyle. 6 weeks after Christmas, Emma broke. She came to our weekly meeting looking haggard and stressed, her usual polished appearance showing cracks. "I can't do this anymore," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I quit." "Do you?" I asked calmly. "That's an interesting choice. Where will you go?" "I'll find another job. There are other bakeries, other restaurants." "Are there? In Detroit? Where the owners all know each other? Where reputation matters?" Her face went white as she realized what I was implying. "You can't blacklist me from an entire industry." "I don't need to blacklist you, Emma. I just need to be honest when people call for references. And the truth is, you have difficulty maintaining professional boundaries. You make poor decisions about workplace relationships. You've shown questionable judgment in personal matters that affect your professional performance. All true statements that would make her essentially unemployable in her field." "Please," she begged. "I know I made mistakes, but please don't destroy my career over them." "Emma," I said gently, "I'm not destroying your career. You destroyed your career when you decided to sleep with your employer's husband. I'm simply declining to help you rebuild it." She left that day and never came back. Within a week, I received her formal resignation letter. Through industry contacts, I heard she struggled to find another management position in Detroit. The best she could manage was an assistant manager role at a small cafe for less than half her previous salary. A few months later, I heard she'd moved out of state, trying to start over somewhere her reputation hadn't followed her. As for William, his karma was swift and brutal. Without the financial security she'd expected, Emma ended their relationship within 2 months of Christmas. She moved back in with her parents, leaving William alone in a cramped apartment he could barely afford. He tried everything to get me back. Phone calls, text messages, showing up at school events, flowers, letters. He even had the audacity to suggest we work things out for the children's sake. But I was done. Completely, permanently done. His financial situation grew desperate quickly. Child support payments, even the minimal amount the court ordered, strained his $52,000 salary. He had to sell his car and buy a used one. He moved to an even cheaper apartment. He was living paycheck to paycheck, struggling in ways he'd never struggled when my business income was subsidizing his lifestyle. The children noticed immediately. They saw their father's stress, his cramped living space, his inability to provide the activities and experiences they were used to. They started making excuses to cut visits short, uncomfortable with the stark difference between their lives with me and their visits with him. Within a year, William had aged a decade. The stress, the loneliness, the financial pressure, it all showed on his face and in his posture. He'd traded a comfortable life with a devoted wife and happy children for nothing. Meanwhile, my life flourished in every way imaginable. Sweet Dreams Bakery expanded to 35 locations across 3 states. We employed over 500 people and generated annual revenues exceeding $28 million. The Sophia Smith Foundation grew beyond my wildest dreams, helping over 800 women transition to economic independence through job training, business loans, and mentorship programs. But most importantly, I was raising my children to understand their worth. Ava, now 9, talked constantly about the business she wanted to start someday. "Like you and Grandma, Mama," she'd say with complete confidence that success was her birthright. Charlotte, 7, spent weekend mornings in the kitchen with me and my mother, learning recipes that had been passed down through generations, while absorbing lessons about strength, independence, and the importance of women supporting each other. Michael, 5, was growing up understanding that women could be anything they wanted to be, that mothers were powerful and capable, that respect wasn't something you had to earn, it was something you deserved. But through all of this success, the person I was most grateful for was my mother. One evening, about a year after that Christmas morning that changed everything, I found Mama in her office at the bakery, working late as usual. "Mama, go home. You've been here 14 hours. "Just finishing up the quarterly reports," she said, looking up with tired eyes that still sparkled with pride. "Mama, we need to talk." She looked worried. "What's wrong, baby?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. But I need you to understand something." I sat down across from her, this woman who'd sacrificed so much for me. I said, simply, "You saved my life." "Oh, Sophia, no, let me finish." "You saw danger I couldn't see. You prepared for possibilities I couldn't imagine. You worked yourself to exhaustion so that when the worst happened, I'd have options." She was crying now, soft tears rolling down her cheeks. "You built me an empire while I was busy disappearing. You gave me power when I felt powerless. You made sure that when my husband decided I was disposable, I wouldn't actually be disposed of. That's what mothers do, baby girl." "Not all mothers, Sophia." "Not all mothers," I said. "Not every mother has the wisdom to see what you saw, the strength to do what you did, the love to sacrifice what you sacrificed. You didn't just save me, Mama. You saved my children. You saved their future." I couldn't bear the thought of you being trapped. I couldn't stand the idea of you having nowhere to go, no way to support yourself and those babies if something happened. And because of you, I was never trapped. Because of you, when William showed me those divorce papers, I could sign them without fear. Because of you, when Emma called me worthless, I knew exactly what I was worth. I reached across the desk and took her hands. Hands that were rougher now from years of hard work. Hands that built something beautiful for me while I wasn't even watching. "Mama, Every woman who's ever felt powerless in her marriage needs to hear this story. Not just my story, our story. They need to know about the mother who saw danger coming and prepared for it. They need to understand that sometimes the greatest act of love is working in the shadows so that your child can stand in the light. She squeezed my hands. I just wanted you to have choices, baby girl. And because of you, I did. Because of you, when my husband brought his mistress to our house on Christmas morning, I wasn't broken. I wasn't trapped. I wasn't powerless. I was the owner of a multi-million-dollar business who could walk away with my head held high. That's all I ever wanted. But Mama, I need you to know the business isn't just mine anymore. It's ours. You built it, you sacrificed for it, you made it what it is. From now on, you're not just my mother helping with my company, you're my full partner. Her eyes widened. Sophia, I don't need... Yes, you do. You need recognition for what you've done. You need ownership of what you've built. You need the title and the salary and the respect that comes with being co-owner of Sweet Dreams Bakery. That night we changed all of the paperwork. Sophia and Helen Smith, co-owners, because that's what we were. Partners, in every way that mattered. But more than that, we became a model for other mothers and daughters. Women started bringing their children to our business seminars, showing them what it looked like when women supported each other across generations. The Sophia Smith Foundation expanded to include a program specifically for mothers, teaching them how to prepare their daughters for financial independence, how to recognize the warning signs of controlling relationships, how to build safety nets their children didn't even know they needed. Every woman needs a backup plan became our motto, and every mother needs to teach her daughter to have one. 2 years after that Christmas morning, I was invited to speak at a conference for women business owners. The topic was generational wealth and women's economic power. Standing on that stage, looking out at hundreds of women who were building their own empires, I told our story. But I made sure everyone understood that this wasn't just about me overcoming adversity. This is about mothers, I said. This is about the women who see storms coming before their children even know it's cloudy. This is about the sacrifices made in shadows so that daughters can stand in sunlight. My mother worked 16-hour days for 8 years, building a business I didn't even know existed. She sacrificed her own comfort, her own rest, her own dreams to make sure that if my world fell apart, I'd have something solid to stand on. When women ask me how I had the strength to walk away from my marriage so calmly, I tell them the truth. I had strength because my mother gave it to me. I had options because she created them. I had power because she built it for me. That's the real lesson here. Not that you should start a business or get divorced or stand up to people who mistreat you. The lesson is that we have to prepare our daughters for realities we hope they'll never face. We have to teach them that love without respect is not love at all. We have to show them that financial dependence is not romantic. It's dangerous. We have to give them skills, resources, and most importantly, the unshakable belief that they deserve better than any man who would ask them to make themselves smaller. After my speech, a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. She said, "My mother tried to tell me things about my fiance that I didn't want to hear. After listening to you, I think maybe I need to listen to her." That conversation led to another young woman avoiding a marriage that would have made her miserable, which led to another woman starting her own business instead of giving up her career for a man, which led to another mother teaching her daughter about financial independence. The ripple effect was beautiful. But the most beautiful part was watching my own children grow up understanding their worth from the beginning. Ava, now 10, was already showing entrepreneurial instincts. She'd started a small business making friendship bracelets, and she managed her profits with the seriousness of someone who understood that financial independence was her birthright. Mama, when I grow up and get married, I'm going to make sure my husband respects my business. I asked, what if he doesn't want you to work? Curious about her response. She said, then I won't marry him, she said matter-of-factly. Grandma says you should never trust a man who wants to make you smaller. Grandma says the wisdom was already passing to the next generation. Charlotte had absorbed different lessons, but equally important ones. She said, I'm going to help women like Grandma helped you. I'm going to build businesses for mothers so their daughters are always safe. And Michael, now 6, was growing up with a completely different understanding of what men should be. When I get married, he told me seriously, I'm going to help my wife with her business like you helped Daddy before he was mean to you. Before he was mean to you. Children see everything, understand everything, remember everything. I asked him, and if she doesn't have a business? He said, then I'll help her start one, because ladies should always have their own money. Ladies should always have their own money. Wisdom from a 6-year-old that many grown women never learn. 3 years after Christmas morning, I got a letter that made me understand the full impact of what my mother and I had built together. It was from a woman named Patricia, who lived in Ohio. Dear Miss Smith, you don't know me, but your story changed my life. More importantly, it changed my daughter's life. She went on to explain that she heard me speak about my mother's sacrifice and had realized she needed to prepare her own daughter for independence. She started a small accounting practice from home while my daughter was in school. She told her it was just to help out with expenses, but really, I was building her a safety net. Last year, when her husband started becoming controlling and demanding she quit her job, she remembered our conversations. She remembered that she had options. She left him. She's working with me now, learning the business. We're building something together, just like you and your mother did. But here's the part that will make you cry. My daughter is now teaching her own 5-year-old daughter about business. She's showing her that women can build their own security. The lesson is passing to the 4th generation. The 4th generation. That's when I understood that what Mama had started wasn't just about saving me. It was about breaking a cycle of dependence that had trapped women for generations. By teaching women to prepare their daughters for independence, we were creating a world where no woman would ever have to choose between safety and dignity. 4 years after Christmas morning, William made one last attempt to contact me. Not to reconcile, he'd finally accepted that ship had sailed, but to apologize. We met at a neutral coffee shop, and I barely recognized him. He had aged dramatically. His hair was gray, and there was a wariness about him that spoke of a man who learned hard lessons too late. Sophia, he said, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed to tell you how sorry I am. I asked, for which part? He said, all of it. The affair, the way I treated you, bringing Emma to the house on Christmas morning, but mostly, I'm sorry for not seeing who you really were. I asked him, who were you, William? He said, you were stronger than I ever gave you credit for, smarter than I realized, more valuable than I understood. And I spent 8 years trying to make you smaller instead of celebrating how incredible you are. I asked him, why? Why did you need me to be small? He was quiet for a long time. Because if you were as amazing as you actually are, then I was just ordinary, and I couldn't handle being ordinary. So you made me ordinary instead. I tried to. But you were never ordinary, Sophia. Even when I convinced you that you were building an empire. Even when I made you disappear, you were still there, still powerful, still worth everything I was too stupid to see. The business was my mother's gift to me, I said. I didn't build it, but you deserved it. And when the moment came, you stepped into it like you'd been preparing for it your whole life. That's not something that can be given to you. That's something you are. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had, and probably the last one we'd ever need. What do you want from me, William? I asked. Nothing, he said. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I lost. Not the house or the money or the lifestyle. I lost a partner who would have made me better if I let her. I lost a woman who loved me enough to disappear herself to make me comfortable. And what will you do with that understanding? I'll make sure our children know how incredible their mother is. I'll make sure they understand that what happened wasn't your fault. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the time you gave me, even though I'll never get that chance again. 5 years after Christmas morning, Sweet Dreams Bakery was featured on the cover of Business Week magazine. The article was titled, Mother-Daughter Dynasty: How Two Women Built an Empire While No One Was Watching. The story focused not just on our business success, but on the broader impact we were having on women's economic empowerment. The foundation had helped over 1,500 women start businesses or return to the workforce. We'd provided over $3 million in microloans to women entrepreneurs. But the part of the article that meant the most to me was a section about Mama. Helen Smith represents a generation of mothers who understood that the greatest gift they could give their daughters wasn't comfort, it was capability. While her daughter was focused on being the perfect wife and mother, Helen was quietly building the infrastructure for her daughter's independence. I never wanted Sophia to need what I built for her, but I wanted her to have it if she did need it. That's what love looks like sometimes. Preparing for disasters you hope never come. The article sparked a national conversation about women's financial independence and the role of mothers in creating generational wealth. We were invited to appear on talk shows, to speak at conferences, to consult with other businesses about empowering women in the workplace. But the most meaningful response came from mothers. Thousands of women wrote to us thanking us for showing them how to prepare their daughters for independence. Many of them started businesses or side hustles specifically to create safety nets for their children. The Sophia Smith effect, as some economists called it, was measurable. Women's business ownership increased by 12% in the year following our story's publication. More importantly, divorce rates among women who owned businesses dropped significantly. When women had financial independence, they were more likely to demand respect in their marriages and more likely to receive it. 7 years after Christmas morning, Emma Johnson reached out to me. She'd moved to California and was working as a manager at a small restaurant. She'd struggled for years, but had finally found some stability. Her email was brief. I wanted to apologize again for what I did. I also wanted to thank you for teaching me that actions have consequences. It was a hard lesson, but I needed to learn it. I hope you and your family are well. I never responded. Some chapters need to stay closed. But I did hear, through mutual connections, that she'd become an advocate for women in her new city. She volunteered with organizations that helped women leave difficult relationships and start over. Perhaps that was her way of making amends, helping other women instead of hurting them. 8 years after Christmas morning, I received an invitation that made me laugh out loud. It was from Emma Johnson. She was getting married, to a single man this time, and wanted to invite me to the wedding. The audacity was breathtaking. I didn't go, obviously, but I did send a beautiful gift and a note. wishing you happiness and building something real together. Because that's what forgiveness looks like sometimes. Not forgetting what happened, but refusing to let it define your future. 10 years after Christmas morning, my children were thriving in ways that filled my heart with pride. Ava, now 15, was already running a legitimate business. She'd expanded from friendship bracelets to a full line of accessories that she sold online. She was making more money than many adults and saving most of it for college and her future business ventures. I want to start a company that helps teenage girls learn about finance and business so they never have to depend on anyone else for their security, she told me. The wisdom was evolving, adapting, growing. Charlotte, 13, had developed a passion for baking that rivaled my own. She worked part-time at Sweet Dreams, learning every aspect of the business from production to management to customer service. I want to expand internationally, she announced one day. I want Sweet Dreams bakeries in every country, so women everywhere have examples of what's possible. And Michael, 11, was growing into exactly the kind of man the world needed more of. In my class, some boys say girls can't be as good at business as men, he told me indignantly. I told them about you and Grandma and said they were wrong. What did you tell them exactly? I asked. I told them that my mom owns a business that makes more money than all of their dads combined, and that my grandma built it from nothing while taking care of everyone else, and that if they think women can't do business, they're just showing how little they know about anything. 12 years after Christmas morning, Mama was diagnosed with arthritis. Her hands, those beautiful hands that built our empire, were finally showing the wear of all those years of hard work. I need to slow down, she admitted one evening as we reviewed quarterly reports together. No, I said. You need to let me take care of you the way you took care of me. We hired a full-time assistant for her, upgraded her office with ergonomic everything, and cut her schedule to 3 days a week. But more importantly, I made sure she understood something crucial. Mama, you don't ever have to work another day in your life if you don't want to. You've done enough. You've given enough. You've sacrificed enough. It's time for you to rest. But the business will be fine because you taught me well, because you built something sustainable, because you prepared me for this just like you prepared me for everything else. She cried then, the relieved tears of a woman who'd been carrying the world on her shoulders and finally felt safe enough to set it down. 15 years after Christmas morning, I stood in front of another audience, but this one was different. This was the graduating class of the Sophia and Helen Smith Business Academy, a school we'd opened to teach young women entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and most importantly, their own worth. Looking out at 50 young women, all of them equipped with the tools and knowledge to never depend on anyone else for their security, I felt a pride that went deeper than money or success or recognition. Ladies, I said, you are graduating into a world that may try to convince you that you need someone else to complete you, to provide for you, to validate your worth. Don't believe it. You are already complete. You already have value. You already deserve respect. The skills you've learned here, the businesses you'll start, the wealth you'll build, these aren't just about money. They're about freedom. They're about choice. They're about never having to compromise your dignity for your security. Some of you will marry wonderful partners who celebrate your success and support your dreams. Others may find that the men in your life feel threatened by your independence. When that happens, remember this moment. Remember what you're worth. Remember that you have options. And someday, when you have daughters of your own, teach them what we've taught you. Prepare them for storms you hope they'll never face. Build safety nets they hope they'll never need. Work in the shadows so they can stand in the light. Because that's what mothers do. That's what women do. That's what we do. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. She was probably 18, beautiful and bright-eyed and full of potential. Miss Smith, she said, My mother wanted me to give you this. She handed me a letter from a woman I'd never met. Dear Sophia, it read, you saved my daughter's life and you don't even know it. 3 years ago, she was dating a boy who was becoming increasingly controlling. He wanted her to skip college, to depend on him, to make herself smaller for his comfort. She was considering it because she thought that's what love looked like. Then she heard you speak at her high school. You told your story about disappearing, about your mother's sacrifice, about learning your worth. My daughter came home that day and broke up with that boy. She applied to your academy, started her own business, and now she's about to graduate with the knowledge and skills to never depend on anyone else for her happiness or security. Thank you for showing her, for showing all of us what's possible when women refuse to disappear. Today, 20 years after that Christmas morning that changed everything, I wake up every morning knowing exactly who I am and exactly what I'm worth. I'm Sophia Smith, co-owner of Sweet Dreams Bakery, a company that generates over $100 million annually and employs over 2,000 people across 12 states. I'm Sophia Smith, founder of the Sophia Smith Foundation, which has helped over 8,000 women achieve economic independence and start their own businesses. I'm Sophia Smith, co-founder of the Sophia and Helen Smith Business Academy, which has graduated over 500 young women who are building their own empires instead of waiting for someone else to provide for them. I'm Sophia Smith, mother of 3 incredible adults who understand their worth and demand respect in all their relationships. But most importantly, I'm Sophia Smith, daughter of Helen Smith, a woman who saw danger coming 20 years before it arrived and spent 8 years preparing for it with the fierce, sacrificial love that only mothers possess. Mama is 83 now, and she spends her days in a beautiful chair in our office, watching the business we built together continue to grow and thrive. She doesn't work anymore. She doesn't need to. She's earned her rest. But she still comes in every day because she loves seeing what her sacrifice became. She loves seeing young women learn about business and independence. She loves knowing that her 8 years of 16-hour days created something that will outlast us both. You know what I'm proudest of? She told me last week as we watched a group of teenagers learn to develop business plans. What's that, Mama? Not the money, not the success, not even the women we've helped, though I love that too. Then what? I'm proudest that your children, my grandchildren, will never have to learn the lessons we had to learn. They'll never have to disappear. They'll never have to choose between love and respect. They'll never have to wonder what they're worth. Because they'll always know. Because they'll always know. That's the real victory. My story started with the Christmas morning that broke my heart but opened my eyes. It continued with discovering that the mother who raised me had been working in shadows to build me a throne I didn't even know existed. But the real story isn't about revenge or justice or even success. The real story is about love. The love of a mother who saw danger coming and prepared for it. The love of a grandmother whose wisdom echoed through generations. The love of a woman who learned to love herself enough to demand better. And the love that we pass on to our children, to other women, to anyone who needs to remember their worth. Because here's what I learned from that Christmas morning 20 years ago. The worst thing that can happen to you can also be the best thing that happens to you if you're prepared for it. I was prepared because my mother loved me enough to work in shadows. I survived because she built me options I didn't know I had. I thrived because she taught me, without words, through actions, that my worth was never up for negotiation. And now, we're teaching other mothers to do the same for their daughters. So let me ask you one final time, beautiful souls who've journeyed with me through this story, what are you going to do with this knowledge? If you're a mother, are you preparing your daughter for independence? Are you building safety nets she doesn't know she needs? Are you teaching her that her worth isn't negotiable? If you're a wife, are you disappearing a little more each day? Are you accepting less than you deserve? Do you have your own options, your own resources, your own power? If you're a daughter, are you listening to your mother's wisdom? Are you building your own security? Are you demanding respect instead of just hoping for love? The choice, as it has always been, is yours. But I hope you choose visibility. I hope you choose independence. I hope you choose to build something that no one can ever take away from you. I hope you teach other women to do the same. Because you deserve to take up space in this world. You deserve to be seen, heard, valued, and respected. You deserve to never, ever disappear. Your worth was never up for debate. It's time to stop letting anyone convince you otherwise. Now tell me, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have stayed calm that Christmas morning, or would you have fought back immediately? How do you feel about my mother's sacrifice? Was she right to work in secret all those years? And what do you think about the way Emma and William's stories ended? Did they get what they deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Share this story with every woman who needs to remember her worth. Hit that like button if this moved you. Please subscribe to this channel, Pressify Stories. And let me know in the comments what country you're watching from. I love connecting with strong women all around the world. Remember, the greatest gift a mother can give her daughter isn't comfort, it's capability. The greatest gift a daughter can give her mother is using that capability to build something beautiful. And the greatest gift we can give each other is the reminder that we all deserve respect, independence, and the power to choose our own lives. Sweet dreams, and never forget your worth. We'll see you in the next story. Bye!